I am tired of pretending everything is working. I'm tired of pretending that every decision I have ever made was a good one. I'm also tired of pretending that the systems I paid for that are for producing are not producing the results they said they were going to. I'm tired of pretending that working harder automatically means I am moving forward. Over the past few years, I have spent a lot of money trying to grow my business. Paid for websites, software, marketing platforms, lead generation, coaching, automation, business tools, all kinds of things to help me attract clients and create revenue. And the promise was always similar: follow the system, stay consistent, trust the process. You're a few feet away from gold, and eventually leads will come. But the leads didn't come. They didn't do anything for me, at least not in the way that justified the amount of money I was spending at all. And for too long, I continued paying for these things that were not producing anything. And I didn't want to admit the biggest thing, I didn't want to admit that it wasn't working. Today, I am admitting it. I'm admitting that I didn't pay attention to my own KPIs. But I'm not giving up. I'm just ready to stop defending a failed strategy. This is the Tail Light Podcast, and today we're going to talk about what happens when a hardworking person finally tells the truth about where they are at in their life. Welcome back to the Tail Light Podcast. I am Steve Unruh. I am a Michigan State Trooper where I'm retired, Army veteran, a real estate advisor, an investor, and a business owner. I have spent a large portion of my life believing in discipline. Show up, do the work, keep your word, push through all the discomfort. Do not quit when it gets hard, especially that. And these principles have served me well in military, law enforcement, real estate, athletics, and in life in general. But I've also learned that discipline can become dangerous when it is attached to the wrong type of strategy. And sometimes we continue doing something because it is working. Other times we continue doing something because we're too proud or embarrassed or afraid to admit that it is not working, that we were wrong. And there's a difference between being persistent and being stubborn. Persistence means staying committed to the mission, okay, the overall mission. Stubbornness means staying committed to a method even after the evidence tells you is failing. That is what this episode is completely about. It's about looking at the evidence. It's about taking responsibility for your actions. And it's about understanding that a failed strategy does not make you a failed person. So when I started investing more heavily in my business, I believed I was doing what responsible business owners are supposed to do. That was, I thought I need better systems. I thought I needed more automation. I thought I needed a more sophisticated website. I thought I needed a customer relationship management platform, and I thought I needed a company to generate my leads. I was the lead. Think of that way. I thought my email campaigns, funnels, landing pages, social media posts, and support and professional marketing. And to be fair, none of those things are automatically bad. Businesses need systems. Yes, businesses need marketing. They need technology. But here was my mistake. Here was my mistake. I started believing that purchasing the machinery of a business was the same as building a business. I got stuck in that. It's not. A website is not a business unless that's what you're doing. A CRM is not a business. An automated email campaign is not a business. A social media page is not a business. A funnel is not a business. A business exists when you consistently solve a problem for a real person who is willing to pay for you to solve their life's problem. And I lost sight of that. Everything else is supposed to support the transaction. But somewhere along the way, I began supporting the system, putting my fingers into it, and instead of the system supporting me. And every month, money left my account. Subscriptions were charged, invoices were paid, services continued. And once you stop the subscription, you don't own any of that. And the return will be gone. So all that energy, gone. And I kept thinking maybe the next campaign would work. That's why I kept going. And maybe the next month will be different. I was just a few feet away from gold. Everybody's heard that story. Maybe one adjustment would finally unlock the results and they come flooding in. So I continued. And that is how a business owner can slowly become trapped. Not because of catastrophic decisions or anything else. It's because of 100 small payments attached to a promise that never materializes. And here's the truth. Of course, there's a lot of truths. I paid hundreds of dollars every month for a marketing and lead generation system. The results were essentially zip, zero, zilch, none, right? No meaningful flow of clients, no meaningful relationships, no source of revenue, no return on investment. And that is difficult to admit. I'm almost too embarrassed to say that now, but it is what it is. It's difficult because I consider myself very analytical, evidence driven. I believe in evidence. I tell my real estate clients to look at the numbers, look at the KPIs, key performance indicators. I encourage investors not to become too emotionally attached to a property. I teach people to evaluate opportunities based on facts, not hope. Yet in my own business, I allowed hope to replace evidence. More hope on this side than the evidence on the other side. Kept thinking the system will work. The system will start working for me. I kept believing that because I had planted the seed, invested so much, walking away would mean money had been wasted, and I wasn't willing to admit that. But the money was already gone. Continue to spend more would not recover it. It would only increase the loss, and that is the sunk cost trap. We stay in bad investments, bad strategies, bad jobs, and sometimes even bad identities and bad relationships because we feel like we do not want the previous efforts to go wasted. Past investments is not a reason to make sure you stick with that decision. So what's the question? Knowing what I know today, would I make these decisions again? The answer, of course, is no. And something else needs to change. I finally reached that point, right? I looked at the money going out, I looked at the results coming in, and I could no longer honestly defend the gap between the two. It's too far. The system was not working. And pretending otherwise was really a super expensive mistake, more than admitting the truth, which is tough, even for me, even if the evidence says it. I do not believe I am alone in this. I know I'm not. A lot of hardworking people are pretending something is working, such as their W-2 job, their careers, everything else, relationships, when it's not. And maybe it is a business, maybe it is a career, maybe it's a financial plan, maybe, again, a relationship with somebody. It's not working. And yet you're too stubborn to let it go. Maybe it's a version of yourself that no longer fits your life and you're trying to build, like being fit. You know, are you still trying to be fit? Have you lost your way in being fit? And it starts with a stem there. Are you being, cognitively and physically and spiritually fit? Have you let that go? But we don't want to admit that. We don't want to admit that we spent money on some subscription and it's being wasted. We don't want to admit that, that guilty pleasure of going to McDonald's or getting those beer and wings are a bad decision when we know it's a bad decision, because we need the relief. We need to have that. But at the same time, when you get done with that short-lived, sense of excitement, a sense of something, and it's now gone, you're stuck with the guilt. But first and foremost, we don't want to look foolish. So, we announced the plan that we're going to do X. We're going to be fit. We're going to go do this. We told people we're building this business or we're building a better us. We invested money, time, and effort and told everybody. We defended the decision. And now changing directions feels like are actually men that we were wrong. And second, we confuse quitting a strategy with quitting the mission. Those are not the same. You can abandon a failing strategy and remain fully committed to the goal. In fact, changing the strategy may be the only way to protect the mission. And I forgot that. And third, we have been taught that success belongs to people who never quit. Well, that's partially true. But that phrase isn't always, it's not fake either. So successful people don't quit. They quit bad plans. They quit unproductive habits. They quit relationship with vendors who do not perform. They quit spending money on appearances just to show up. They quit defending decisions that no longer make sense. But they do not quit on the destination. Where are you going? They change the route, how we get there, but you don't change the destination. Fourth, sometimes quitting seems better than rebuilding. And you admit something is not working, you become responsible for deciding what happens next. That can be very uncomfortable. And you no longer get to blame the system. You have to then turn around and blame yourself. And that takes a little bit of self-searching. I just went to Alaska where I was salmon fishing, and I had a long flight back, and this weighed on my mind. I had to admit that my decision that I made on these particular goals, or not my goal, my particular route from which I will get there to get my goal, was the best path. And it's not. It wasn't. That was tough to swallow. That whole flight back, a red eye back from Alaska, had me thinking about that. And I finally had to come to the conclusion by the time the wheels hit the ground, I decided that I was not going to quit my mission and what I want to do. I quit the route I was taking. And does that mean I have to backtrack a little bit? Absolutely, it does. Yeah, it does. We have to backtrack now. And so, because I was blaming the system, but I no longer get to do that. I don't get the privilege of blaming the system. And I no longer get to wait for the company that I hired to rescue me. I have to do it myself. Nobody's going to help you. Only you help you. So you got to tell that the results are just around the corner. We can't say that. You have to act. Part of that action, maybe retreat, find a different route. But doing that gives you the possibility of finally succeeding in what you want to go. Remember, it's a destination. Where you're trying to go. And this may be the most important part of the entire episode. At least this is what I think as I was thinking about this on my flight back. A strategy can fail without you being a failure. A marketing campaign can fail. A business model can fail. Service provider definitely can fail you. An investment can fail you, right? Any plan. My gosh, in my life, I've had many plans that failed. That does not mean that you lack intelligence, discipline, ability, or value. It means the outcome did not match your expectation. So hope was greater than the logic. And the responsible response is evaluation, KPIs. What did I expect to happen? What actually happened? Did you write this down? Why is there a difference? What could I have controlled? What did I control? What did I fail to measure? What did I ignore because I wanted the plan to work? Why was my head so far buried deep in the sand that I didn't recognize the steps along the way that weren't actually happening? You know, how did I fail that? Was my biggest question that I was asking myself. At what point could I have done it? It's easy to look back, but why didn't I recognize that when it was coming along? Because there's too much hope. Rose-colored glasses. They were so rose-colored that they were red. And now I see red. That's, you know, it didn't make sense. And so in law enforcement and military, we would call this an after action review. You would have an after action review on whatever happened. You talk, and it wouldn't, you know, some things that you did, you wouldn't have to like a full blown. If you have a good partner, like, and this applies to anybody else. You don't have to have like a whole department or some lieutenant sit in front of them talking the whole platoon about the AAR after action review. You know, in police work, it'd just be you and your partner. And you'd say, how could we have done this better? How could we have written this report better? How could we have done this situation better? I had a good partner like that. For years, we would talk. Even if they failed to partner us up and we were with others, we would call each other on stuff. We were almost inseparable on things, and we would still call each other. I have a business partner that we call. We're not in the same business, but we talk about things. And I had to call him and say, all this shit is just screwed up. And so, hey, backtrack, reroute what got me to where I am, redo that, get back to the basics, and start moving. And the whole purpose of the after action review isn't to humiliate yourself or humiliate anybody else around you. That's not the point. Don't get into self-deprecation to the point you fail to pick up and move. That's silly. I just had a conversation a few minutes ago before this podcast about my failures. And, you know, I had somebody listening to me, and thank God they did listen to me. You know, they didn't have to, but they did. Somebody here in the office. And so, you know, find your support, whatever it is. But the point is to humiliate yourself into doing nothing. The point is to figure out what you do, improve the future performance, because this isn't it's a lesson to be learned. It's not a lesson to go back in your hole and forget it. It's a lesson for future performance when this happens again, and more money, and you have more money on the line because your business has grown or people are now working underneath you. You have more money on the line and more things to lose. You see these things, and guess what? Now you know how to react. You've been down that road before. You know not to go down that road. You know to stick with what works, the very basics. or what it was that you had to use. Depends on your industry. So what was, you're sitting there thinking, you're like, okay, what was supposed to happen? What you wanted to happen, and what went well, what went wrong, right? And what needs to change. Simple as that. Simple as that. Business owners need to conduct themselves in an after action view all the time. And I should have done this quarterly, and I didn't. But I'll tell you what, we're doing it quarterly from now on. What did I do? What KPIs are done? Don't just stick with it and hopefully that this will come along. And I was foolish. I got suckered into it, and it's my fault. I'm taking all full 100% responsibility for this. I'm not blaming the systems that I bought into, because they did what they said they were going to do. They were there to take my money, and I utilized their systems. Whether or not I got clients out of it or not, that was not a guarantee at all, was it? But I wasn't. I should have stopped that after 3 months. Wasn't getting anywhere. Or after the first quarter, maybe 2 quarters, but I went on for longer. So we need to take every result personally, but not enough to the fact we freeze up, right? So if a campaign fails and we think we are bad at business, we say no. We're not. If a prospect says no and we think nobody wants what we offer, we don't do that. But a month goes by without enough revenue and we start questioning our identity, that emotional response makes it harder to think clearly. It does. So I'm trying to separate myself from the strategy. I am not the software. I am not the campaign. I'm not the number of leads generated last month. I'm not the amount currently sitting in my business account. In other words, how much money I have. Those are just data points. Important data points, yes, but still data points nonetheless. And they tell me where I am. They do not get to decide where I finish. This is very important. They don't get to decide where I finish, because my goal is down the way. I will get there. So I recently started canceling subscriptions, just like that. That might not sound dramatic, but emotionally it was. It was. Every cancellation represented something I once believed would help me succeed, and it did not. Canceling these systems felt like admitting that I had made the wrong decision. But after I did, I felt something else. I felt relief. I was no longer paying to protect the appearance of progress. Not at all. I was no longer confusing expenses with investment. An expense becomes an investment only when it has a reasonable expectation of producing a value to you. Otherwise, it is simply money leaving your account. That's it. This does not mean that I will never spend money on marketing again, because that is a complete lie. That is not true. Does not mean technology is unnecessary. That too is untrue. Does not mean every company I hired was dishonest. That is not true. It means I am changing the standard for how it works with me. From now on, every expense needs a purpose. And what problem did it solve for me? What purpose should it create? What purpose is being measured? And how am I willing to test this purpose? What is the exit point if it does not perform, and how long am I going to give it? These questions should have been asked earlier by myself, and clearly they were not. Now they become part of the rebuild, right? I don't want to make a business complicated and that looks impressive, or make things more complicated. I want to build a simple business that produces revenue and something that's going to take over my life, so I can focus on my clients, not on the systems. So what happens now? I rebuild. Simple. But I don't want to rebuild the same thing. I can't. I don't want to build something more direct, more personal, more measurable, and more honest. The first part of that rebuild is financial discipline. I am reducing unnecessary expenses. I am looking at cash flow. I'm identifying what produces revenue and what merely consumes it, what holds up my money. And I'm going to stop purchasing new solutions before fully using the resources I already have. Simple as that. The second part is direct communication. I need more conversations with more people, actual people. I'm back to networking, not just automated emails, not just scheduled posts, not just online impressions, likes, clicks, and whatever. I'm talking about conversations, phone calls, actual meetings, follow-ups. And of course, I need more coffee in my life with all that. Networking, asking people what they need and how I can solve it, or vice versa, and finding out what problems they are trying to solve themselves. And hopefully those people, I can hook up with the right people. Make an offer based on real needs instead of assumptions. A business growth that is through trust, and trust is difficult to automate. And a third part is useful content. I still believe in creating videos, podcasts, emails, and educational material, but the content needs to serve a clear purpose. I believe I've started to get on my flight back. I was on my phone and influencers. Influencers are dumb. I mean, the stuff that they put out is dumb. The influencers aren't dumb. The stuff they put out is dumb. It's just 4 seconds of something. Somebody putting makeup on. I'm like, really? You know, I mean, maybe some people to watch them put makeup on. Really? This is really something that you need to do. This is going to serve a real purpose and trying to get you going. No, they're just saying, hey, I got this product and I'm putting it out to it's an advertising, or, you know, just other dumb things to irritate people in life. You see many of the things that just I'm watching this kid riding a wheelie and almost crashing into people. How is this good? I I mean, he's getting likes, clicks, probably getting paid because a lot of people are viewing it. It's a complete waste of time. So my other decision is how is this? What am I doing? Everything I'm doing is going to try to be useful to somebody. That's my purpose if I'm going to put it out there. And that has to do with my business too. Yes, real estate can be boring. It is. It's slow, it's boring. But there are many other aspects of my life that I find very useful with people. So this is how it's going to change and how to make people make better decisions about stuff, or at least start a conversation about that. And it should basically also show them how I think. How do I think about things? Them to get to know me. It should demonstrate the problems that I can help solve as well. And it should create a reason for the right person to begin a conversation with me. I do not need to become an internet celebrity or anything, nor do I want to. I need to become useful to a specific group of people, my crew, my tribe, everything else. And here's the most important part, because I've let this go. The fourth part is physical discipline. I have been thinking a lot about this, and I have let myself go because I've let other things take, well, I won't bore you with it. I've let myself go again. And I've been thinking a lot about becoming financially and physically fit and how's I going to do it. And this is a good rebuild for this. I'm going to be posting things on how I'm doing that, getting rid of certain things and telling them, hey, we have spent this much money on this and instead of buying this. And I'm talking about getting fit instead of wasting my mornings drinking coffee and scrolling. I'm going to pick up my physical fitness thing more and so on and so forth. And so, being over the next 90 days, those two goals of being financially and physically fit are going to be at the top of my, to-do list. And I do notice when I have more energy, I make way better decisions. When I eat better, when I make better decisions, I become more consistent and I'm more efficient about those consistency. I create better results. Everybody knows this. I do not want to talk about transformation while refusing to transform myself. That's the big thing. I'm not going to be some hypocrite. So I'm going to document that process as well. Not as an expert standing at the finish line saying you should do this and everything else, but I'm talking about just, hey, this is me doing the work. And the fifth part is, of course, honesty about everything. I'm going to share what works. I also want to share what does not. And there's enough content online from people pretending that every idea they have becomes successful. That is not a real business. Real business involves mistakes, mistakes, and mistakes. It involves wasting money. It involves getting the wrong assumptions. It involves being uncomfortable in conversation. It involves doubt. I have doubt. Believe it or not, Steve Unruh has doubt. It involves an adjustment, encouragement, resiliency, stick-to-itiveness. And when those right actions are repeated long enough, we'll get progress. So here's my 90-day rebuild. So this is tough for me to even put out here. So for the next 90 days, I want to approach my business and my life a little bit differently, right? This is not going to be another vague promise to work harder. And I'm working harder without direction is how people exhaust themselves while staying in the same place. I want specific standards. Number one, I'm going to focus on revenue producing activity every day. That means speaking to prospective clients, following up with people, presenting offers, requesting referrals, and building strategic relationships. This is the core of any business. This is the core of most business people out there, is actually just getting out there and doing this. Number two, the content that I create connects directly to the problems I believe my audience is trying to solve: financial frustration, career dissatisfaction, real estate confusion, the fear of investing, let's see, lack of direction where you want to go, and the desire to create more options about their retirement. And also, we're going to put on there being physically fit, like every day waking up and saying, I'm going to document, hey, I'm on Strava, so I got to post my link to Strava to show what, well, how am I producing? How am I actually moving along in fitness? And I'm going to measure my results. It's not going to be likes or anything else or some vague engagement thing like you can get on social media. And I don't care about that. It's or not the feeling of being busy. It's conversations and appointments, offers and clients and revenue, right? And I will continue removing expenses that do not support my mission. And as I said before, most important, I am going to become physically stronger and more disciplined. And I am going to actually post my things, what I'm doing physically, to try to get myself up, including my weight. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm 282 pounds. I don't need to be this big. I need to be smaller. And so over the next, and I need to eat cleaner. And I'm going to do that. And I'm going to try to, always keep picking the ball up and keep going all again and again and again on physical fitness. And I'm just going to talk honestly about this whole process. And sure, there's going to be some setbacks and there's going to be some downfalls, and I'm going to trip every once in a while, and so on and so forth. And there may be some weeks when results are disappointing or I get a little down, because everybody does, especially when you're trying to push yourself. When you're pushing the limits, you're going to have doubts, you're going to have mistakes, you're going to have problems. But I would rather publicly document an honest rebuild than privately maintain a false appearance of success like a lot of people do. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say this is it. So you may not own a business, but you may still be pretending that something is working, right? Maybe you keep telling yourself that your job is secure even though you feel trapped. Maybe you keep, contributing to a retirement plan without understanding what if it will support your life after you retire or the life you want. Maybe you keep saying that you will start investing once the market becomes perfect. It never does. Maybe you keep paying for services you do not use, all those subscription rates. Maybe you keep following advice that doesn't fit your situation at all from some guru that you will never be like. I'm just an average guy, just trying to make it in this world. I'm no superior tier 1 fitness influencer, just blue collar. I like my beer and my wings and stuff like that, and good steak, simple things. Or the most dangerous thing is maybe you're staying busy because being busy protects you from discovering the activity that you need to do to produce anything meaningful. That one, to me, I see a lot of people do. They always keep themselves with so busy, meaningful tasks. And I fell into this too. That protects you from actually going out and doing something meaningful. So here's the question I would encourage you to ask yourself. What evidence do you have, or what evidence do I have, that my current plan is working? Not what do I hope will happen, not what did someone promise me on anything, not how much time or money I have already invested. What does the evidence say? Then ask a second question. What am I afraid will happen if I admit that it's not working? Will you feel embarrassed? Will someone judge you, or you feel like you're being judged? Will you have to start over, or you have to backtrack? You have to accept responsibilities for your actions, right? And you will have to make that difficult decision of pivoting or rerouting. That truth may be uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to me. I don't like it. But pretending has a definitive cost. And it costs money, it costs time, and it costs energy. And it costs your confidence. And that's huge for me. you know. Sometimes the most powerful decision you can make is to stop pretending and look directly at the evidence and say, this is not working. However, I'm going to change it. I do not have a perfect ending for this episode at all. I don't. I cannot tell you that I canceled. I can tell you that I did cancel a few subscription and change my attitude, and suddenly everything became easy, and that's not true. That would be another form of pretending, because everything didn't get easier once I canceled it. My business is not where I want it to be yet. No, my financial results are not yet where I want them to be, and I put them at high goals, very high. I'm yet not in the physical condition I presently want to be in. I still have uncertainty. I don't know what it's like at my age to change my physical and financial life. I still have pressure. I still have work to do. I put that pressure on myself. But something has changed, and it had to change. And I'm no longer willing to confuse motion with progress, showing up and being busy just to diagnose that. And I'm no longer willing to pay for hope without measuring the results. I'm no longer willing to defend a strategy simply because I chose it. Now I have to see it to the end. I am no longer willing to pretend everything is working when it's not. I am cutting what is not working out. I'm taking responsibility for what happens next. Simple as that. And over the next 90 days, I am going to rebuild myself physically, financially, professionally, spiritually. And I'll show you what I try, and I will tell you what worked for me. I will admit what fails, and I will keep moving forward, because struggle does not disqualify you from helping someone else. It does not. You do not need to have every answer. I mean, what's the fun of it then if you had every answer? You do not need to be standing at the finish line. But sometimes the most valuable person to follow is simply the person a few steps ahead of you, holding the tail light in the darkness. Thank you for listening to the Taillight Podcast. I'm Steve Unruh. Until next time, stop pretending, examine the evidence, and keep moving forward. Everybody have a great day.